People wanted the next great frontier, the next chapter in the lineage that gave us Oblivion, Fallout 3, New Vegas, Skyrim. People wanted the moment where Bethesda would finally reach beyond familiar fantasy realms and irradiated wastelands and break into the impossible vastness of space. The premise was intoxicating. 1,000 planets, a whole galaxy of stories, a sense of possibility so expansive that the very idea of a limit felt obsolete. And then the game released. Some players adored it. Others saw it as a modding tool, as every Bethesda game is, and a large group simply were just disappointed by it. So the question becomes, why do people not like this game? Bethesda stories are a peculiar thing. They often unfold less like traditional narratives and more like a sprawling story that takes you on a journey across whatever world you're playing in. They are rarely masterpieces of plot structure, but they are often exceptional frameworks for exploration, discovery, and personal agency to the narrative. Starfield is no different. The overall premise of Starfield is to search for this mysterious artifacts and the revelations about the nature of the universe. It's genuinely compelling if you have a knack for wanting to find out about the unknown, but for the rest of us, it's not compelling at all. While the intro does set up the artifacts as this out-of-universe thing, they lose tangibility in the sense that they never feel that special. They're forgettable. I found myself really struggling to be motivated to complete the main story early on because there just wasn't enough in it. It was just like, go here, find X artifact, and return. That was the premise. Why? Because why not? We're space explorers. For all I know, these could just be magical fucking rocks. The mystery of what these artifacts were just didn't land with me. But that being said, as we progressed through the story and the mystery started to unravel, it really did start to intrigue me. And the late game revelations about the Starborn are just among the most ambitious story beats Bethesda has probably ever attempted. It's unpredictable and executed exceptionally well. At least from a blind playthrough perspective, figuring out what or why the Starborn are who they are is enticing. I had speculations, of course, but actually figuring it out as the narrative unravels is satisfying to say the least. The main story of Starfield is kind of just a one-off thing. After multiple playthroughs, the Starborn dialogue doesn't really do much. I realized that it kind of just became a backdrop. Like all previous entries into the Bethesda catalog, the main story is just an incentive to visit new and different places, to engage with new and different factions, and to complete new and different quests. However, for many people, myself included, the structure of the main story becomes an issue. If you simply follow the main quests without deliberately diverting yourself, the experience is around 20 hours of relatively linear content. The quests flow naturally into one another, which is ordinarily a strength, but here it becomes restrictive. The game subtly pressures you into moving from one constellation mission into the next. Instead of a narrative that encourages detours, it gently funnels you forward. It is this quiet, psychological force of momentum. The pacing makes you feel as though you should continue the main story rather than stop and step away and explore a faction quest or do a side narrative for a little bit. And while players can choose to divert, doing so feels slightly artificial. You have to ruin your own immersion just for the sake of getting to actually experience the game. You're intentionally ruining it by just going off and doing something else. This is where many players begin to feel that the story, while conceptually strong, lacks the organic breathing room that makes Bethesda games feel alive. Skyrim let you wander. Main quests left the room for you to occupy your time elsewhere, to travel from point to point, discovering quests and new places along the way. Fallout 4 lets you lose yourself in the ruins for hours. Starfield tends to place you on rails without fully admitting that it's doing so. Because of the way the ship traversing between planets works, you just don't run into as many things along the way as you would have in Skyrim or Fallout. And even with every new location offering dozens of quests, it just isn't the same. Yet, paradoxically, the side content is where the game genuinely shines. The faction quest lines range from excellent to extraordinary. The Freestar Collective storyline in particular is widely regarded as one of the best pieces of narrative design in the entire game. The UC questline could probably pass as the main story questline, it's that long, but it offers morally engaging choices, memorable characters, and consequences that feel tangible and are reflected in the world. Your choices have an impact on the world itself and the planets within the system. The faction quests are great because you actually feel like you're impacting on these factions dramatically. It's not like Skyrim where it happens and then they really could have just continued on without you. Here it's actually rewarding. This creates an unusual tension that the content that feels the most Bethesda is not the central story. It's the side quests, the content, the faction quests that you do by distinctively deciding not to do the main story. And then we reach the most controversial narrative mechanic in the game, New Game Plus and the Starborn. The temples and powers are mechanical weak points. Almost everyone agrees on this. The temples are essentially vending machines dispensing abilities, except the minigame is repetitive and makes you waste about 5 minutes of your life every time. The floating light sphere is tedious, and sometimes it doesn't even work properly. The powers feel like space-themed copies of Skyrim shouts, but without the historical weight that the Thuum possessed. It's just a horribly underdeveloped system that is screaming for more variation and attention, and probably could even not be in the game. That being said, the narrative role of the Starborn is brilliant. It is a meta-commentary at its finest. I don't think I've seen a New Game Plus system better than this, at least in creating a believable reason to play the game again. When you step into a new universe, a new playthrough, and meet Sarah again, you realize it's not your Sarah. She even acknowledges that. The Sarah you explored the galaxy with in the first one, the one you married, the one who may have died or may have lived, that version of her is gone, locked in your first playthrough, in the first universe, never to be seen again. The emotional loss is profound in the way that few games ever attempt. I feel connected to each universe to a degree of I'm enjoying whatever I'm doing or trying to do in that playthrough. I'll never have the Sarah romance that I had in the first playthrough. Sure, it's an option I can romance the Sarah of the current universe, but it's not the very first time. I'll never have that experience of doing it for the first time again. Each universe, despite holding the same quests and characters, is different entirely because your character has lived in previous universes. This is where the Starborn becomes philosophical. The Hunter is a character who prioritizes power and efficiency, who loops through universes without attachment. The Emissary is a character who believes in structure and rules, who wants to police and regulate the multiverse. Both figures are distorted mirrors of the player's possible approach. It took me a couple of playthroughs to realize that, but while I was the Emissary, caring about each character and each universe as I traveled through them. I found that with each passing playthrough, I became more like the Hunter though. If something happened I didn't like, I found myself saying, oh well, I don't know, I'll do that differently in the next playthrough I guess. Caring more about just getting through this universe and into the next than actually appreciating the universe I was currently in. This is Bethesda acknowledging the nature of a role-playing game themselves, and it is genuinely one of the most interesting creative decisions in the entire game. Whether players loved it or, despised the mechanic, very few can deny that it is a bold attempt to reframe New Game Plus as a narrative device rather than just simple progression loops. For many people, this alone almost redeems the story. It certainly does for me, but for others it highlights a deeper frustration that the most interesting themes arrive late, after the systems surrounding them have already failed. So with all that said, the story of Starfield is peculiar, one that is neither here nor there. The companion system in Starfield feels like an evolution of the Bethesda formula, However, they only really executed correctly on one, maybe two of the companions at most. What I mean by this is that Sarah is the only companion who feels thoroughly integrated into the central narrative. Her presence, her quest involvement, her interjections, her romance arc, and her narrative weight far exceed the other companions. It's not even close. There are arguments for Andrea, as she's a strong secondary option, but she doesn't compare. Her interjections and involvement in the main story aren't as prolific as Sarah's, and once you've completed her questline or romanced her, she begins to fade into the background. Just like the other companions, Sam Coe and Barrett have their own questlines and charm, but both suffer from their personal quests reaching a resolution far faster than Andrea, let alone Sarah. The result is a companion system that appears expansive but often funnels you towards one central figure, especially if you want a romance that feels fully supported by the story. So you almost always end up leaning towards Sarah, because it's the most addictive to the experience. In saying this though, the system itself is quite robust. The ability to manage a crew, assign them to ships or outposts, and bring them on missions is satisfying, even if the functional bonus they provide becomes less, relevant in later playthroughs. The emotional role that they play is still solid. I love the immersion of going on a mission with Autumn Macmillan as a Freestar Ranger. It felt like we were just out on patrol as Rangers together, doing random ass quests in the Freestar Collective. There is a sense that Starfield contains the skeletons of an outstanding companion system, that it is the right evolution on the existing Bethesda formula, but one that needed deeper writing across all characters rather than just Sarah. Combat in Starfield is quite broad. The gunplay is significantly better than Fallout in my opinion, with each other weapon feeling dramatically different with different designs, weight and feel to the bullets, lasers and their range. The sense of impact is also improved, with actual reactionary flinching from enemies. The arsenal that you can assemble is enormous, and the crafting system allows for meaningful experimentation and attachment building. Many players genuinely enjoy the minute-to-minute shooting, and I was one of them. However, the enemies are the real problem. Alien creatures exhibit extremely predictable behaviour. They either charge or use the occasional range attack. There is no sense of predatorial hierarchy, no stalking behaviours, no pack dynamics, no environmental influence. Human enemies are scarcely better. They take cover, they push and they flee. That is essentially the entire behavioural catalogue. Now, for a shooter campaign game, let's say, 7 to 8 hours long, this level of AI intelligence is manageable. But in a game that you can be spending upwards of 100 hours per playthrough in, the combat starts to feel repetitive across the entire game. You encounter different enemies with different appearances, yet the underlying behaviour is almost identical. A street gang on Neon behaves exactly like an elite military unit. There is no distinction between factions, no specialised tactics, nothing that elevates the diversification of the galaxy into the diversity of combat encounters. This, more than anything else, is what causes the ground combat to feel flat. Not the weapons, not the animations, not the sound design. The enemies simply do not evolve, and in an average playthrough, you're gonna be sick of them after the 20-hour mark. Ship combat, on the other hand, is a triumph. It strikes a balance between atmospheric flight and space flight that feels intuitive yet exhilarating. Drifting, targeting, power management, and boarding actions are deeply satisfying. The weapon variety is meaningful, and the sense of space combat is both an art and a science is beautifully realised. I feel like I could play an entire space game within this system, set up for the fight and flight creation. The only drawback is the balance though. Missiles feel underpowered, likely remnants from a time when ammunition was limited. They're strong against ships without a shield, but then so is everything else. Because once a ship's shields are down, it's usually game over. Particle weapons are overshadowing everything, rendering lasers and ballistics functionally irrelevant once you reach late game gear. but the overall experience is superb, and many players consider space combat the single strongest mechanic element in the entire game, and that's why I also don't have much else to say about it. It's just something they got absolutely right. The skill system is ambitious, it is vast, detailed, and gives the impression of a classic role-playing philosophy where every attribute is earned. However, this also becomes its downfall. Many basic abilities are locked behind skills that feel unnecessary. Cruise size should be a ship statistic, not a character skill. It should be determined by the number of beds or cabin quarters available on your ship. Access to higher tier ship parts should be dependent on money or reputation with that star system's main questline, not on sinking 12 points into the technology tree. Health regeneration outside of combat should be a fundamental feature of any long-form adventure, not locked behind 12 more points in the physical tree. There is also the issue of mandatory skills, carrying capacity, lockpicking, stamina improvements, foundational health increases. These are essentially important to every playthrough, yet they consume valuable skill points and diminish build creativity because you have to sacrifice points because you feel like you always need these. I understand that in the long run, playthroughs will carry skills into the New Game Plus, and this ensures that there is achievements to be reached in a New Game Plus, but what this means is the vast majority who play the game through once will never actually get to use the skills to define their proper build because they've wasted half of them on essential skills. But when that's not enough, the challenge system arrives to make everything more cumbersome. Unlocking a higher tier of skill requires completing a specific task, even if that task conflicts with your current playstyle. You may need to sprint until your stamina empties multiple times. You may have to take X amount of damage to your ship, making it just a waiting game in ship combat encounters. It disrupts the natural flow of progression. It feels artificially obstructed and sometimes punitive. Many players end up ignoring the systems entirely until they accumulate a mountain of unspent skill points, like myself, who had I think about 8 or 9 all at once, waiting for challenges to complete on the skills I actually wanted to spend them on. The tragedy is that the system could be excellent. The ideas are strong, the categories are meaningful, and the structure encourages identity, but the implementation often feels bloated for the sake of tradition rather than the sake of player expression. Give us this system without the challenges, without the essential skills, and tie them into other elements of the game, and you've got a perfect skill system. This one just doesn't quite hit the mark. Starfield's world design is a bit of a paradox. The handcrafted environments are exceptional. Cities like Neon and New Atlantis feel believable, dense and visually striking. Interiors are detailed, cluttered, atmospheric. You can sense the care that went into every hand-placed object. But that's just the thing. You can tell pretty easily what is handcrafted in the game and, well, what's not. The open planets are where the criticism becomes loud. So loud that you can find yourself kind of forgetting how well crafted everything else is. Procedural generation, while impressive on a technical level, fails to hit the mark here. The result is landscapes that feel empty and repetitive, points of interest repeating frequently across all planets. Biomes often feel flat, barren, and devoid of dramatic landmarks. My biggest issue is that most planets are just carbon copies of one another. There are no massive gorges or giant mountains. Sure, there are mountains, but they feel like hills because you can just run to the top of them. There are some distinctions between planets, sure, but the vast majority consist of similar height maps that become, bland and all merged into one. It may be realistic, but it's not interesting to play. Give us dramatically different experiences on each planet. It's being procedurally generated, so why not crank the numbers up to be more sporadic? Or have each planet have a theme? The absence of diverse planetary geography is one of the biggest complaints. Many worlds are wide open spaces with nothing but distant markers on your compass. Exploration becomes a linear jog across a mostly featureless environment, or just driving to the point of interest until you complete the scan for that planet. Yet in saying this, the atmosphere of the planets is often awe-inspiring, and I'm not talking about the atmosphere that keeps in oxygen. The skyboxes, the weather systems, the sense of standing on a moon under the shadows of a colossal gas giant all work beautifully. The alien life forms that inhabit some planets are incredible and always enjoyable to discover when it's not just a reskin of one that you've already seen on another planet. The emotional effect of being in space is powerful. The practical effect of exploring space is often less so. This is the heart of the issue. The game captures the fantasy of space, but not the complexities of it. Players want ravines, canyons, cliffs, volcanic regions, alien jungle worlds, dynamic cave systems, multi-layered geography. Instead, what we got was just large areas that feel like repeated templates with different color palettes. It creates a sense of monotony and undercuts the grandeur of the galaxy. The shipbuilding is also one of the systems that is widely regarded as being pretty damn good. It is creative, intuitive, and remarkably flexible. Even with its limitations, you can construct vessels with personality and identity. The process of designing, modifying, and upgrading your ship is addictive. It becomes a ritual. Every playthrough that I spend about an hour or two after I've completed the first questline for that playthrough, just designing the ship that I'm going to use for the rest of that playthrough. The joy of it is that you experiment, refine, and eventually settle on something that feels like a physical extension of your character or the vibes that you want to run with that playthrough. While some parts feel restricted, the overall system is so engaging that most players forgive the occasional constraint. It is one of the rare areas where Bethesda's ambition fully matches their execution. Base building divides the community more than any of the other features. Some players find it completely useless and others adore it. They spend hours constructing enormous facilities, carefully designing outposts across the entire universe, and vast automated resource networks. They treat it as an industrial engineering challenge. Others find it restrictive, clunky, and poorly integrated, because outposts sometimes lack flexible tools. Terrain can sometimes be uncooperative, and modules snap awkwardly sometimes. Foundations are limited, multi-level structures are unreliable, and the interface feels pretty damn dated at this point. Systems can even sometimes break without explanation. Many players argue that the entire feature feels unfinished. It lacks purpose, because what's the point of building an outpost to generate resources when the resources themselves are only used in crafting, often only needing to be used once, and that's that. Sure, crafting and research and decorating your homes is nice, but none of it is essential. The outpost system lacks reward and lacks the charm that settlement building had in Fallout 4. The fundamental problem is that the outposts offer enormous effort in exchange for limited payoff. You can build a massive production network, but most of the items you produce can simply be, purchased or looted faster than you probably could have gotten them from sinking the hours into building 6 outposts to cover all resources. For builders though, it's enjoyable. For most players, it is irrelevant. If you want to get Starfield for the outpost building system exclusively, I'd say go for it. But that's one of the things. It's just an extra system there for the players that want to engage with it. It's one of those things that a vast majority of us won't delve deep enough into. But for the builders out there, this system is most certainly for you. So why do people not like Starfield? It is ambitious yet often restrained. It is vast yet sometimes empty. It contains extraordinary ideas yet pairs them with mechanical systems that feel dated or just undercooked. It has some of the best faction quests Bethesda have ever written, yet a main story that fails to inspire. It has an exceptional shipbuilder and diverse base builder. It has breathtaking atmospheres and a barren landscape. It introduces a fascinating philosophical meta-narrative, yet surrounds it with the weakest mechanical loop in the game. Starfield is not a bad game, it is a conflicted one. People expected a space Skyrim. What they received was a fusion of traditional role-playing, procedural exploration, and philosophical science fiction. Some players saw the genius in that, others saw the missed potential. The truth lies somewhere in the middle. Starfield is a foundation, a framework, a first attempt at something enormous. It has brilliance inside it, but also structural weakness that prevents it from reaching the transcendent heights that many had hoped it would achieve. It is a game that could improve dramatically with time, updates, expansions, and community mods, just as, past Bethesda titles have. But as it currently stands, it is a fascinatingly flawed, ambitious project that sparks frustration because of how close it came to greatness without fully grasping it. And that, more than anything else, is why people don't like Starfield, because it shows them a vision of something extraordinary, the potential, but just misses the mark. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing, as well as let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below.